Welcome everybody to the X Factor podcast, and today we have a great episode coming your way right through here, talking about the NFL divisional round playoffs, second round of the playoffs. We are now 2 rounds away from the final, or the 1 round away from the championship, as everything concluded last night. And first, we're gonna get right into it here. We're gonna follow the social media accounts. My TikTok, X Factor Sports 420, and my Twitter, which is X Factor Sports. And yeah, we're gonna get right into it here. The Baltimore Ravens versus the Houston Texans were the first playoff game to happen over the weekend. And not gonna lie from you, at the start, I expected some hope. I expected some hope from C.J. Stroud and all them, but then after a while, it just second half happened, and they crumbled. They crumbled at the end of the game. And it was kind of like how it was during the first game of the year when they played. I think they only scored 9 points in that game. So Baltimore still coming away with a good victory. Lamar Jackson had one hell of a game. The passing yards don't show it, but the rushing yards definitely do show it. He's their leading rusher with 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns to end the day. And I want to talk about Houston here, because Houston, there's 2 teams so far, 2 or 3 teams. I'm going to say about 3 teams that nobody would have expected would be at this spot in this part of the season. Houston Texans, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Green Bay Packers. And nobody expected them to go in there and get into a second round and do what they did. C.J. Stroud had the worst of all of them. It was a huge blowout loss against Baltimore. But that also just shows how much they have to look forward into next year, because DeMeco Ryans' first year as a head coach, he comes in a 10-6 or 11-7 or 11-6 record, and he goes out or a 10-6 record, and comes out and he gets into the divisional round of the playoffs, and C.J. Stroud, he showed promise in the first game. This game, he was, it was the Baltimore defense. The Baltimore defense kind of shook them up a little bit. But there's something to look forward to. You have draft picks going in for next year. You're red hot. You can look forward into next year knowing that you have your pieces in Damian Priest, Devin Singletary, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, Robert Woods if he stays around. You got people there that can help. And then Noah Brown, who had a pretty good year this year, which is weird because his last year in Dallas, he was a bunch of drops. This year he comes out and he had a couple games where he was just outstanding, one of the best. He looked like a top 10 receiver. So going into next year, you're gonna have some high promises for this Houston Texans team, and then now we're gonna have a real conversation on who is the best Texas team, Dallas or Houston. I still have the slight edge on Dallas, and yes, I will still say even after the playoff loss, because the playoffs show what a team is, but the whole season shows how a team is in general. And Dallas had a better season than them. Dak played better than C.J. Stroud. CeeDee Lamb played better than any of the receivers. Tony Pollard, I can say I would rather have Tony Pollard than Devin Singletary or Dameon Pierce. So Houston still has some things to work for, fix, but also has a lot of things to look forward to going into next season to try to win themselves a championship. As now for Baltimore, they're in their first AFC championship game. I think it's since their last Super Bowl, I believe. They're in their first AFC championship game in a while, and John Harbaugh is trying to win his first or second Super Bowl, And now Lamar Jackson trying to win his first ever Super Bowl. And I feel like we all knew Lamar is a good quarterback. We just have to see what he can do when he has the weapons. And well, he shows a lot of greatness when it comes to he has Zay Flowers, Bateman. Hell no, he got Nelson Aguilar going at some parts of the season. Isaiah Likely replacing for Andrews. And Zay Flowers is the real number one on that team. And he has showed week in, week out, he's one of the best rookie receivers. And as for the defense, they have just been sharp all season long. There's a couple. I don't think I can name a better defense outside of San Francisco that can come in and do what they do. And a lot of it has to do with Roquan Smith, who has been easily the best player on that team so far. But going into the AFC Championship game, you just hope that Lamar Jackson doesn't choke or doesn't. He gets them through and gets them to their first Super Bowl in 10 years. So a lot of things. I think what we saw from Baltimore this season is what we should have been seeing from Baltimore the last couple of years with receivers, if they had a receiver with them. And it just shows as Lamar is now one of the MVP favorites. So yeah. Going into the next playoff game of the weekend, the Green Bay Packers go in to play the San Francisco 49ers. The Packers upset the Dallas Cowboys last week in Dallas, which was a very upsetting game. But they come out here and they almost surprised them. They almost upset the number one seed coming in, and the main thing was mistakes. Mistakes were the one thing. Jordan Love threw 2 picks. The last one looked like a Brett Favre type pick. If you know the NFC Championship game against the Saints, you would know it looked just similar to that, like that one right there. But the 49ers, they didn't look that good either. They were about to crumble. They let up McCaffrey to only 98 yards rushing. Purdy, he had an all right game. He 23 for 39, 252 and a touchdown. 2 picks that were dropped. Other than that, defense, they were outstanding. Dre Greenlaw, outstanding. He had a hell of a fucking game. 2 picks with the game. But one of the things, as the 49ers, we got to have a conversation about Brock Purdy. Because I have seen a couple of things on, whether if Brock Purdy is really the man for San Francisco. And for me, I always feel like Brock Purdy is he's good. He's good. Don't get me wrong, but he's not like a game changer. He's not changing a game in any which way or form. Yes, he'll have good plays, which is what good quarterbacks do. They have good plays, but he ain't doing stuff like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson every game. He ain't doing freaking the most insane stuff every game. He's either going outside getting a pass off, which is still pretty good, and then it's the yards after catch stuff. And I feel like a lot of people have started to notice that it's not a lot of this whole Brock Purdy's that good thing. And don't get me wrong, he is a good quarterback, but if you need him to carry a team and win a game or like win a big game, these next 2 games are going to prove everything to you if they make the Super Bowl. Because we know how the 49ers are in the wild card and divisional. They're outstanding. They're one of the best in those first 2 rounds. But when you go into the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, 2019, they lost the Super Bowl. Bad management, bad coaching by Shanahan at the end. And yes, they still had Jimmy Garoppolo, who was playing top level. And then they go into 2020, everyone was hurt. 21, losing the NFC, They go in, they lost in the NFC Championship game. Last year, they go in, they lose in the NFC Championship game. So now, they're going to third straight NFC Championship game. And now you look at it, if they come out and they lose to Detroit, or they lose to Baltimore or Kansas City, got to have a real conversation about them too as quote-unquote chokers, as like what a lot of people like to call teams nowadays. Because yes, they do make it to the big games, they do make it to the championship games, but the main thing is you have to win those games. You can look good all season, but when it comes down to it, when you're playing in the big game, that's where everyone's going to know. That's where everyone's going to know what you are. That's what everyone know how you're going to play in, like how you really are as a player. Is how you do in those big games. And if you don't get in those big games, you're not going to... The media's going to crumble you down. They do it to everybody. And for me, I feel like the only thing that's holding him back is Shanahan. And I've said this before. Kyle Shanahan. I almost said Mike Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan is holding this team back, and it's because of the quarterback situation. They have a hell of a team. They have had one of the best teams last couple of years. Well, last 2 years. And if they would have had Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, all them type of players on that team, if they had those type of quarterbacks, they're winning Super Bowls. Especially if you have Mahomes, Jackson, Allen, Burrow on those teams. You're winning Super Bowls. But we've seen this with Pete Carroll. We've seen this with a lot of other coaches where you need to get a quarterback where you can control. And if you can't control the quarterback, you're going to have an issue. And Pete Carroll, he's done well with telling quarterbacks how to do and what to do. Because he has led Geno Smith to 2 seasons where they have had winning seasons. 2 of them, one of them was a playoff spot. Also, we've seen how it's gone with Russell Wilson. We've seen how he's played without Pete Carroll on his side. So Pete Carroll, he gets a pass because he's already won a championship. As of for Kyle Shanahan, all he has right now is an upgraded, overhyped Jimmy Garoppolo. That's what he has. And until he wins a championship, I'm not gonna say anything otherwise. If they go out and they win the championship this year, I will say I could potentially be wrong. But Jimmy Garoppolo, he's made a Super Bowl. Brock Purdy, he has a chance to do it just this year, which I believe they will do that because I think they have a chance. I believe they can tear down Detroit. Detroit is not on their level just yet, in my opinion. But if Brock Purdy wants to show what he's really made of, these next 2 games, if something starts crumbling down or if something starts going downhill for him, he needs to carry that team back up and show him why he is there, why he's the starter. And in the games that they've lost this year, he has not shown that. It feels like when the team goes down, he crumbles. So that's what we need to look forward to the next couple weeks, to see how he can go when things go down. And the other night showed it. Things were going down. They were down by 7, or they were down by 4. Boom, he gets him a game-winning drive. That's step number 1. Now we need to see how you go when you play a team that has a physical defense. We know how physical the Detroit Lions defense is. We know how physical the Chiefs defense is. This is the best Chiefs defense in years. In Patrick Mahomes' era, it's their best defense. And then you also got to think about Baltimore, which we knew what Baltimore can do to them. We've seen it earlier in the year. And so for me, all I see in the NFC is lower contenders to the AFC. It's just who is the AFC going to bite this year is the way it feels like for all teams. Because I don't think 49ers or the Lions can beat the Chiefs or the Ravens. Lions did it earlier in the year, but they didn't have Chris Jones or Travis Kelce. And in the playoffs, you don't bet against Patrick Mahomes. I learned that the hard way. But going off from that, we got to talk about the Packers. Jordan Love, he's the same thing like C.J. Stroud. They have a lot to think about, and a lot to look forward to going into next year. They didn't. This is another team that felt like they didn't need to. They weren't supposed to be here, but guess what? They were there. And Jordan Love had one hell of a year, and the second half of the year, first half of the year, kind of ugly. Second half of the year, he comes out and he balls out. Goes in the playoffs, have one hell of a game against the Dallas Cowboys. Goes in here, he still has a pretty good game against 49ers. He almost beats them. And it's just the two interceptions that really hurt everything. And those are mistakes that you can work on over the offseason and work how to fix later. Because we've seen the throw mechanics. He can throw like Aaron Rodgers. We've seen it. But it's just those rookie mistakes. And it's hard to say that's a rookie mistake because he's been in the league for 4 years, but he's been benched for 4 years. He's been developing under Aaron Rodgers. So if you develop under Aaron Rodgers and you look like this, the second half of the year and into the playoffs, they have a lot to look forward to. And LaFleur might have a job saved. Because I feel like if Jordan Love wouldn't be the guy, he'd be fired in the next 2 seasons. So that's one way to look at it. And then they have one hell of a young team, too. They have the youngest average team in the NFL. So that's another thing to look forward to as well. So, next game we're going to talk about here, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers faced the Detroit Lions, another team that we felt like didn't need to be there, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or that they weren't supposed to be here type moments. They started ugly out in the year. They came back in. Baker brought them in. They won a playoff game against against Philadelphia. And then they go out and they almost had Detroit. The fourth quarter, I feel like, is where everything started to slow down for them. The defense came up clutch at the end, got an interception. But for Baker Mayfield, and I've said this before, Cleveland made the wrong mistake getting rid of him. Cleveland, they're making bad organization moves, and that's what bad organizations do. They make bad moves to think that they're better off with something else. And by the looks of it, I don't think Deshaun Watson, what's he done for him? He's been hurt. When he came back last year, he didn't play good. He didn't play good when he was in. So I feel like Cleveland's missing out on Baker Mayfield, and Kevin Stefanski is going to be the one to blame for that because he's the one who let Baker play when he was hurt, and I feel like that was a reason to have a reason to get rid of him. They say, oh, Baker didn't play well. Okay, well you got to also think he was hurt, but it doesn't matter because he still sucks. Quote on funny stuff, and then you go on. You think he's terrible. He goes on. He plays for the Rams and the Panthers. Panthers, they had no good use for him. Hell, you've seen it with Sean McVay and the Rams. He looked good with the Rams. And he goes out and he plays for Todd Bowles, who's not even an offensive-minded coach, but has a great offensive coordinator. And they come out and he looks good. He had his best season of his career, in my opinion. The record doesn't look like it, but he had one hell of a year. Better yards than 2020, more touchdowns than 2020, and I think he has better pass rating than him too, than his 2020 year. So if I were Tampa Bay, the future is bright for Baker Mayfield and what he can do. As for Mike Evans, you got to try to re-sign him. Yeah, I seen in that playoff game. We know how Baker is with Mike Evans. He can get that ball to him. We see what he can do with Chris Godwin. He can get him the ball at times, but still can give him that. K. Otton, who's becoming one of the upper tight ends in the league now. There's so much underutilized talent of people on this roster that you can sit there and go in the next year and say, okay, well, how do we know how to make it better? And one thing, Baker Mayfield's going to be the leader of that. So for Tampa, I expect him to be back next year and be one of the better teams. As of for Detroit, Jared Goff. I feel like Jared Goff in with the Rams, he had his big confidence going in. They lose the Super Bowl. I feel like he lost his confidence a little bit. He goes into Detroit. And he said about a week ago that when the fans started cheering him, he got confidence, and this is what we're getting out of him. The confidence is getting to Jared Goff, and he's getting well to get everything. And they also have Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, who they use very good in this system. Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the best receivers in the league. Sam Laporta, if anyone's shocked on Sam Laporta, on how he's developed, watch his Iowa tape. He was one of the best tight ends, in my opinion, in his years in Iowa. When you need a play down the field or on the side, or you need a curl route or an out route, boom, he was there. Third down and 3. You need a little check down, boom, he was there. You need a third down and 5. You needed an out route, boom, he was there. You need anything from him to get that first down, he's going to get it. We've seen it at Iowa. Well, I've seen it at Iowa. Iowa fan, I know how good he is. And again, they have another Goodwill team. And if it wasn't for the Stafford trade, they probably wouldn't be having this stuff right now. They'd be going another year where they're just trash. And their defense, too, they need to be talked about because they have a one hell of a defense under Aaron Glenn. So with Detroit going to the first NFC Championship game in, I believe, 30-some years, could it be? Maybe even ever. Shit, I didn't do my research on this, folks. So that's very good for them. I would like to see them go in. But like I said, I feel like they can win, but the thing is, will they win? And I don't think they will. I do think they can, I just don't think they will. And then as of for the main event of the week, Kansas City Chiefs go on to play Buffalo Bills and our version of the Peyton Manning Tom Brady rivalry. This rivalry has just been the best. I feel like we're in the next couple of years. It's going to be most likely better than the Manning Brady rivalry. Regular season, Josh Allen gets the Chiefs every time, but you got to realize when you got to play them twice, you got to try to keep your A game. And don't worry. Josh Allen kept his A game. I'm not saying he didn't. He played one hell of a game. He put the team on his back for this game. And I think the main thing is they have receivers here that you feel like should not even be on the team. You have Latavius Murray on this team. When was the last time you heard of Latavius Murray? He had 3 catches. We have another guy, Khalil Shakir. He has came in out of nowhere and has had one hell of a year. He's one guy you got to look forward to. Dalton Kincaid, rookie, outstanding season for him as a tight end. They know how to use him well. And they couldn't even get Stephon Diggs rolling. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with the Chiefs' defense. They have been unstoppable all damn year. They haven't let a team go over 30 points. They're averaging 7 points in the second half, and don't you look at that? They only scored 7 points in the second half. So if I was the Bills, I'd be like, you gotta look at some receivers. You gotta look at the offensive line a little bit. And defense wise, you gotta get some pressure on Mahomes, obviously. But you definitely know Bills will be back. They will always be back. Every year they're always back. And we need to see him take some wins over the Chiefs going into the next upcoming seasons if they want to keep this playoff rivalry intact. Because right now he's 0-3 against them in the playoffs. He's 3-0 against them in the regular season. We need to kind of switch it around here a little bit. We need to get some wins on the postseason. And they haven't been to an AFC Championship game since 2021, I believe. 2020 or 2021. And as for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes doing Patrick Mahomes things. He best quarterback in the league. No one's above him. Isaiah Pacheco ran like a madman all game. Travis Kelce had the most catches, most receiving yards, most touchdowns out of anyone on the team. And one thing I'm starting to realize is Rashid Rice is a guy who Mahomes is starting to rely on now. Last week he had one hell of a game. He didn't have as much this game with 4 for 47, but you know when he's there, he's there. The stats don't always gotta show how the player looks. Plays also show how the player looks. And you know that when Mahomes needs him, that's one of the guys he looks forward to. And with Travis Kelce getting up there in age, he's gonna be, I think he's 34, 35 years old now. He don't got many years left in him. Who knows when he's gonna retire? Jason Kelce just retired last week. So, looking at this Chiefs game, they have a chance to win again this year. I won't bet against Patrick Mahomes. I had the Bills winning. But they came in, they played evil, and they had a chance to. They have a chance to go back to back, and well, you just don't prove them wrong. As for the next week's games, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. The only way I see these teams winning, either of these teams winning, with the 49ers, they gotta shut Jared Goff down. They gotta shut it off. Amon-Ra St. Brown or Sam Laporta. If they can shut down one of those two guys, or shut down the run game, there's a chance that they can get the win. As for the offense, they just got to keep sharpening it down the field. They just have to keep doing what they've been doing all year, and it's the check downs and the McCaffrey runs, and then at one point of the game, Brock Purdy will make a good play. He does almost every game. He makes a good play. But that's not going to change my narrative on him because Jimmy Garoppolo did the same exact stuff when he was there, and he had his big stuff going on. As for Detroit, I feel like they need to have a physical defense. They need to stop Brock Purdy. They need to stop McCaffrey. You need to stop George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. I know Debo's hurt. I don't know whether or not he will play. We already know how he does without Debo, so we need to know what he's going to do without Ayuk or McCaffrey. I'm not saying take everyone out of the game, but when you need Brock Purdy to show what he's really worth, we really need to see how he's really worth next week. Because if there's going to be a spot in the game, I guarantee where there's going to be a spot where they're going to be down, and Detroit's going to look all high and mighty, you need to look at Brock Purdy and go, boom, get the win for us. Win this game for everyone. Let's get to a Super Bowl. And if they can do that, then the next challenge would have to be the Ravens or Chiefs. And I'm going to keep 49ers as the underdog throughout this whole thing because I don't think they can win it. And I would like to see them prove me wrong because it will sting when they do prove me wrong. And I will come on this show and I will admit I was wrong. But as for the Lions, I just you need this. The Lions need this one. The fans need this one. But you're going into San Francisco, one of the best teams in the NFL. I just don't see it happening. As for the Chiefs and Ravens, I just told you the Chiefs hold up 7 points in the second half every time, or average 7 points on defense in the second half. We seen how they did with Josh Allen in the running game. They need to stop Lamar Jackson. If you don't stop Lamar Jackson, they're going down. But the thing is, Josh Allen had two receivers he could rely on. Lamar Jackson could rely on everyone. He has nearly everyone that he makes bad. He looks players that they never heard of, and he makes them look like stars, and that's what makes him so great. And you need to stop the run game, otherwise you're not getting that done. And as for Baltimore, you need to score a lot of points in the first half because in the second half, that's when that defense starts going, and you need to just make sure you have a couple touchdown lead by the time halftime hits. Like, you need to keep running up that clock or running up the score. And you can't let them. You can't just run time on them because we've seen how the Bills do it. And as for the Chiefs, they just need to stop Lamar Jackson, like I said. And Mahomes needs to do Mahomes things. So that's all I got for y'all today. Rest of the week is wrestling stuff. My reviews for the AFC and NFC Championship game will be next week. Also, Royal Rumble's happening this week, so obviously that stuff will come in through soon. Y'all stay blessed. Have a good